So good morning, everybody, or good noon, or in the case of our partner company here, Patrick Luig with RWE, good evening, who's joining us from Essen, Germany. One of the powers of a virtual conference is that we are able to bring a lot of people together for a very, very exciting time and a very exciting story. I'm very, very pleased to present Patrick and the case study here with RWE and Enbala. And frankly, this story has been one that's been emerging over many years. I'm Bud Vos, I'm the president and CEO of Enbala, and I'll be taking you through a bit of this case study for the next 20 minutes. If I could go to the next slide, please. We can go past the title slide, thank you. Next slide. One of the key elements, one of the hallmarks of what we call virtual power plants and distributed energy resource management systems is that they're highly focused around the 3 Ds, and we fundamentally believe that the grid markets are at a tipping point. Decarbonization, digitalization, and decentralization is truly and fundamentally changing the way our electric grid operates. We formed a partnership with RWE a number of years ago, and you'll see from part of their story why this is so important to them. Not only is it important to RWE, it's important to the entire European Union as we see a massive transformation moving in the direction of decarbonization. The decentralization component comes because this is a distributed virtual power plant. So we have been working with RWE to build a virtual power plant that is at the grid edge. And of course, we're using massive amounts of digital technology, including our software, communication systems, and very, very advanced trading systems to bring this all together. Next slide, please. Just a brief snapshot of things that are happening all around the world. I think it's fair to say that Enbala is a global company, and as of earlier this week, we became even more global with the acquisition by Generac of our company. And one of the reasons why Generac was interested in this, and one of the reasons why Enbala has been growing so dramatically over the last couple of years, is because of all of these trends happening all around the world. We're, of course, on this call probably very familiar with the types of things that are happening here in North America, whether it's in California, New York, the desert Southwest. But when you look more broadly, you see things happening all around the world that are fundamentally changing the shape of our wholesale markets. Next slide, please. So here's a great example of why do VPPs matter. When we look in Europe and we see the move towards decarbonization, this is a snapshot from Bloomberg New Energy Finance, taken in October of 2017, actually not too far in advance of when we entered into our project with RWE. And you see here a trend that has continued through many parts of Europe and has continued for many years. It's negative price. Fundamentally, you see the power mix at the top there and all the different colored graphs, and you see the blue line is the spot market power price. Now, this is a weekend. Through that weekend, we find that the price not only went negative for small periods of time, it was frankly negative for the entire weekend. These are the times when VPPs fundamentally matter. The ability to absorb energy during these negative price situations, and then the ability to give it back on positive price. And then, of course, what you're going to hear from our partner here with RWE is that they're an energy trading company. This is critical to their success. They manage assets throughout the entire grid and throughout the entire German market. So the ability to use VPPs as a hedging tool, as a trading tool, and fundamentally to actually help stabilize their portfolio is fundamental to the way that they're thinking about how they would use a very, very large VPP that we're building with them. So this is just an example of why this matters. And here shortly, I'll turn the microphone over to Patrick, who will tell you how we're actually doing it. Next slide, please. Last, I just want to highlight the value of the Grid 2.0. One of the key fundamental elements of what we're doing is we're unlocking the value by bringing together all of these disparate resources. With RWE, we're very focused on commercial and industrial customers. We're not looking at residential in this project. So you'll find things such as large industrial loads, even some behind the meter generation, storage, the combination of solar and storage, and all of these resources need to come together, and they're delivered through our platform called Concerto. And as you'll hear from Patrick, Concerto is then interfaced and is operating with the wholesale market so that we can trade and monetize these resources. Next slide, please. So let's get right into the actual story itself. Enough about Enbala and some of our technology. I love this photo. Thank you, Patrick, for furnishing it. That is actually the RWE trading floor in Essen, Germany. And I'm going to now turn the mic over to Patrick, who's going to take us through the story from his perspective. Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, but thank you very much for the introduction. So my name is Patrick Luig. I'm from RWE, especially RWE Supply and Trading. What you see here is exactly our trading floor, and what you see maybe in the background, that's exactly where I'm sitting at, right, basically in front of that picture here. Yeah, I'd like to take the chance to give some introductory words towards RWE. Maybe you're not familiar with that company. It's based in Germany, in Essen exactly. But RWE transformed into a worldwide company, latest by a transaction with E.ON, where we took over the renewables portfolio of E.ON and merged it together with the existing renewables portfolio of RWE. So we are also operating quite a capacity outside the US market for wind generation. Next slide, please. Yeah, RWE is looking back to quite a long history. It's around 120 years of electricity generation. We have around 45 gigawatt of generation portfolio, which is distributed around classic conventional lignite, hardcore power station, nuclear power station, gas, and also wind generation. So after the E.ON transition, we operate around about 9 gigawatt of renewables, and that makes us to one of the leading companies. So it's a number 4 in the worldwide renewables generation, number 2 in the offshore generation. And exactly that entire transition is part of our strategy. So could you please change to the next slide, which is stated by our CEO, Rolf Martin Schmitz. They want to be climate neutral by 2040. And how we're doing that, not only by the transition towards renewable generation, but also by focusing on future-oriented technologies. And that's exactly where that entire project, Decentrally, comes into play, and also the cooperation together with Enbala. Next slide, please. So to explain where we're located exactly is, so RWE is composed of 4 main pillars. It's the renewables generation, it's the classical hardcore gas-fired power station, and the lignite and nuclear power station. And finally, and that's where I'm located at, is RWE Supply and Trading. So we are doing the entire trading dispatch coordination around that fleet. Next slide, please. So where the central program together with Enbala is located at is at our commercial heart of the entire dispatch. So it's exactly where the physical assets, the customers, and the commodity markets cross, and that's part of our portfolio and asset optimization system. We call it the commercial asset optimization department. So what we're doing with Enbala, what's our plan to do with the entire project, is to offer distributed capacities in the classical markets where we're already operating at. But at the moment, we're operating with larger capacities, which is slightly different to optimizing smaller distributed assets. It has to be very automatical. The process has to be slim and lean. That's way different to optimizing something around 600 to 1,000 megawatt. That's exactly where the project starts with. So the focus of the program is on establishing a SCADA system and including the entire processes in our trading system and trading board. So it's a sales portfolio management system, including the market access and the entire backend processes we are doing together with Enbala. Next slide, please. Yeah, what you see here is exactly the motivation for a partnership with Enbala. The system itself, so what you see is delivered as decentral. That's our program for distributed assets. And the core of that is the SCADA system of around Enbala and Concerto, which combines the customer assets of our large industrial customers, which is basically around aluminum industry, it's paper industry, some German car manufacturers, also data centers in Germany, and in our core markets as well, in Europe, first of all. Those units will be optimized in balancing markets. On the one hand, it's the ancillary service for primary, secondary reserve, and so on, classical wholesale market, and grid fee optimization. And what Bud just indicated is there's a lot of things going on in Europe right now. So there are a lot of changes in regulation which are upcoming. It's a green climate program by the EU, which will cause some changes, some harmonization between the markets. It's things should be market oriented, and that's sort of preparation we are doing. We are focusing on high scalability, on an advanced infrastructure to increase automation in our processes. Target is here in that sense to be fully automated in a CNI VPP solution, which we will offer to our customers, and we're operating that unit. That's the first step in our program in our classical control areas, which are listed above in the right upper corner. So it's 10 and 50 Hertz, so it's a little bit different. But we do have an TSO in Germany, and we're offering those products there in that control areas. Below is here massive scalability. What it really means, it's a real-time or near real-time optimization, especially in a secondary reserve market. We have 3-second cycle. We aim to operating around 1,000 units in one single pool. So it has to be very high performant. It has to be very accurate in that sense, and the entire process behind that has to be seamless. So it's a tough project we are implementing. That's our target, and we are on a very good way with our partner, Enbala. Could you please step to the next slide, please? So what you see here, these are the current markets we are operating right now. It's the primary reserve market down to secondary reserve, minute reserve, in a different time frames. There are different auctions taking place every day for all those markets, including the intraday market. And our vision is to use Concerto, so it's the platform of Enbala, in all that markets to do a simultaneous optimization across all markets on a market rational basis. That's unique, and therefore we need to have a very high level of automation and also market know-how, which we set up together with Enbala in our corporation. That's what it's all about. So talking about a little bit about the project itself, I mean, the complexities are we're talking about an implementation of an high-performant infrastructure in a highly performant existing infrastructure, which causes some challenges we are facing together with our partner. And there's one special thing as well, that's most of the documents, especially the official documents, are not translated, they are written in the German language and in a, let's say, official German language, which is a little bit different maybe. And to get all the translation back to an English operating company with a proper translation is not that simple. But I think we are on a very good track on that. So the status of the project is that we are close to commissioning, and so the first technical unit we are operating and we are testing with is a classical electrical boiler. That's what I started with. I was explaining it to our colleagues from Enbala. it's a 40 megawatt boiler, and said, "Oh, we are also operating 40 megawatt boiler for a kilowatt boiler." Sorry, and I said, "No, it's not a kilowatt, it's a megawatt boiler, and that's the first unit we'll connect to Concerto and to take it into operation." Yeah, that's it. But so that's so far to our introduction, our user story bit. To give a short outlook, so we are currently going into commission with the secondary reserve market, which is which has some complexity itself. Then focusing the other balancing markets like minute reserve and primary reserve. And then we'll see how things will evolve. And we are sure that Enbala will give us the opportunity also to get into those markets which will emerge, like capacity markets, which are not there at the moment, or congestion markets that may come up in the next 5 to 10 years. So that's the beginning of our path.
Great, thank you, Patrick. Really, really fascinating case study and story. I think everybody on the phone can recognize there's a lot of things happening here in this deployment. The first thing that's happening is it's a very mixed asset type approach. We're starting with loads. We're going to be bringing in all kinds of different types of resources. The second aspect that I think is important is there's economic optimization that's occurring against all of these different markets. But of course, that's being done in partnership with the RWE trading floor, that giant floor sitting behind Patrick there. So, you know, the software Concerto itself is going to be managing and controlling and helping to monetize these VPPs, and it's also doing it in concert with what RWE is doing at their larger trading operations. So truly value that can be brought to both RWE, the end customer, and to the market at its whole. We'll pause there. I think, Rich, we've probably got a couple minutes for any questions that may be on the line. I'll turn it back over to you, Rich.
Fantastic. Yes, thanks both of you. We do have a few minutes left before we transition to the next presentation. As I await any questions that pop up here in the chat window, I just think I'll offer a question for both of you. You know, and I know you may not have stumbled into much beyond the translation issue that was raised by Patrick, but to date, you know, one of the best ways to learn, none of these projects go, you know, always according to plan. I think there's always hiccups and hurdles and obstacles along the way. I was just wondering if either of you could talk to anything that you've encountered so far that's presented, say, a technical or a market challenge that you've been able to at least identify, if not remedy.
Oh, Patrick, I think you're probably closer to it than I am. Why don't you take that question?
Well, of course, Rich, good point. Well, there are always things like that. Well, it started with the translation of the documents first. I mean, first time I was dealing with that, I was really surprised that all those documents are just in one language. I mean, it's we're an open country, and to have companies like Enbala also offering services in our country as well, but things are only written in German. First thing, but then having the existing infrastructure and running infrastructure, and to get that new system into our infrastructure also running, it's one thing we stumbled with. So it took a while to reconfigure our network infrastructure to also operate Enbala, to operate a system like an additional SCADA system like Enbala in our infrastructure. It took a while, so we came over that, but it was surprising how something like an existing infrastructure could be challenging to implement for the implementation of a new system. And that's the biggest hurdle of systems like Concerto is it's not only that you have the technology itself, you have to implement that technology into an existing infrastructure, into a company that's running, into the people that are operating the existing infrastructure, and that's the biggest challenge for those companies, though, and for those projects.
Thank you very much.